Before this job, what did you do before?
Well, it depends on what time frame you're referring to, but for 3.5 years prior to accepting this position, I was retired, fully retired, surfing, having the time of my life. And then prior to the retirement, I had worked in public service for 41 years.
You were in law enforcement for years, right?
Right, 41 years, but the last 4 of those 41 years, I was a police chief and a city manager.
Why did you take this job? You know it's going to come with criticism and ridicule. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a city council member, a mayor, board of supervisor, you're going to get criticized. Why did you take this job?
Well, for one thing, I had been asked for over a year to consider taking the job because there were some really serious problems. And I had to admit to the girlfriend I had at the time that I was motivated by several factors. The one that I'm the least proud of is ego. I was told that, there were so many problems and the challenges were so big, I almost couldn't not take the job. That's what I mean by the ego part of it. And the reason I say I'm not proud of it is I don't like to do things as a result of ego. The other part that came into play was I had had all that time to basically have no obligations, no debts, no bills, no obligations, no family issues. And after 41 years of serving in a public capacity and doing things for other people and then being totally selfish and only doing what I wanted to do, it actually got a little bit old. It was like, I don't feel that, I didn't feel that good about myself. I don't know if you can relate to that, but if you just serve yourself, you don't have a spouse, any kids to take care of. My mind and my body was programmed to do something good for the community, to help other people, and I lost that. So in some ways, psychologically, I was ripe for stepping into a situation like this.
What did you learn in law enforcement? Did you learn anything in that experience, that job that you had in law enforcement? Did you learn anything good?
Of course, I learned a tremendous amount. I can't even account for everything that I've learned. When you're 19 years old and you're a full-fledged police officer, you're probably not full of wisdom and people skills and so on. And I went to a situation that was very volatile, and there was a seasoned officer dealing with a man who was extremely upset, who looked like he would potentially want to, get physical and fight. And there was a part of me that was getting ready to, okay, now we're going to have to get tough with this case. But the officer who was there, who was the so-called lead officer of the situation, he did something totally unexpected. And instead of wrestling this man to the ground and using force, etc., he sat down on a nearby bus bench before the so-called suspect. He was still standing, which, by the way, is a little bit risky for a police officer to do. And he, in a really low and calm voice, said something to the effect of, can we talk about this? You look really upset. The officer, instead of meeting force with force and confrontation with confrontation, he totally diffused the situation. Now, that was in the first or second year of my 41-year career. Now this is an additional 3 years later, and that's still part of my basic makeup. So every occasion that I came across where reacting that way was a possibility, I was able to use it. So even though I'm physically very capable and very large, I actually rarely had to even put a hand on another person, just by using a technique that really just amounted to respecting that other person, no matter what they did wrong, no matter who they were. It just never mattered. All you have to do, with the exception of people who are so drugged out of their minds that no logic will affect them, just treat them like a human being and respect, and you're going to get it back. That is the core of what I learned, all from one incident. When I was a young cop, we wore a light blue shirt. And yes, colors matter. Or instead of all black and paramilitary gear, which you see all of our cops wearing. So, and we had blue pants with a white stripe, and it may not sound like anything, but it is significant, the way we would dress then, and we didn't have so much nomenclature on our belts, and it was just it was a different feel back then. So yes, it's totally different now.
Talk about this real quick. The Atwater Police Officers Association had a meeting and they voted a 85% vote. And this is from them, an 85% vote, and they had concerns of former Chief of Police Mr. Samuel being, his lack of leadership and overall distrust. Can we get more input on why he's so untrustworthy? Because some people might say the taxpayers pay for it. He is on leave. Is there any way we can have more information on why he's so untrustworthy?
Yeah, that you're asking me a question that by law I'm prohibited to answer, and I would open up the city to, allegations of libel and slander. But what I can tell you is that there is a process underway right now which involves, an outside source doing basically it's called a management audit. So these two individuals are interviewing every police officer and every non-sworn person in the police department to do an assessment of what are the issues in general, how is the leadership perceived, and what are the pros and cons. Generally just an organizational health review. Now, even after that assessment is done, because it's a personnel issue, neither the city council or our human resources or I can ever say anything about it, which is unfortunate, but that's just the way that the law has evolved. So police officers in particular have the greatest amount of privacy protection of virtually any employee in the governmental system, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level.
I understand you can't say that's understandable, but should the public though in reality know?
I think so.
Okay.
Because I think the situation as it stands now, number one, it generates a lot of rumors. It also generates distrust in the system, because if you don't tell anybody anything, all it's going to do is cause people to either fill in the blanks with their own version of the story, and I think it fosters distrust of government. So I am very much opposed to that, but I also believe in an individual's rights, and once the audit is done and everything is defined and understood, then I think there should be a public release, but we will be prohibited, even if it's a positive review. Okay.
Now, can we clarify, some people have stated, so you can clarify this, that you didn't like Samuel for personal reasons. Maybe something happened. Is that false or is that true?
I actually only met him about the second week into doing this job. So I may have seen him, but I never talked to him.
Okay, so you didn't have no personal vendetta against the guy?
No, I didn't know him to have such I didn't know him to know if I would like him or not, or if I felt I could work with him or not. It truly was the case that, yes, I had done ride-alongs with the organization, and I'd been around the city on several occasions, but I never interacted with him.
So the new chief of police, he's the right guy for the job?
I'm very satisfied with his work because I'm experiencing it firsthand. And I'm getting a lot of really good feedback, both from the community and particularly from the employees.
What business would you like to see come to Atwater?
Well, there's several things that really are needed here. A hospital, some additional restaurants that are a little more diverse, and just in general, I'd like to see more commercial activity, except that the last thing that I just mentioned is kind of a conflicted thing, because Amazon has made a huge impact on retail, and so I have to be careful not to use kind of outdated concepts, that I might desire for this community. But it would be nice if there was more retail, but definitely the hospital and the hotels. My feeling is that there are a number of people who would very much like to see me not be here. Yeah, there's definitely been rumors. There's what I consider pretty strange theories about why I'm here. Well, one of them that I think is just a complete outrage is the suggestion that Cindy Vieira has a spouse who works where I used to work, and that I want him to come over here to be the police chief to do her a favor. Well, I'm certainly not going to come out of retirement to do something like that. That's not going to happen either. So if that's one of those issues, it's ridiculous. It makes me think that, okay, this is so unjustified. Is that being thrown out there so that it'll keep me away from problems that may be even criminal in nature in the organization? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the reputation I have is that I'll come into an organization and I clean it up. That's exactly what I'm doing here.
You want to clean...
I want the budget to be taken care of. I want our evidence room to be free of any doubt or question about any misappropriation of property, etc. I want to make sure that our policies and procedures are up to date, current, and legitimate. But to take a job that requires me to frequently come in here at 7 o'clock in the morning and go home at 10 just so I can get a council member's spouse into the police chief position is absurd.
But you'd like to get along with everyone, right? But
it's not going to happen with the job I have. And the people who are my detractors, I reached out to some of them, but I think it's pretty obvious they don't want to talk to me. And that's probably because their agenda is very different from mine.
would you like to see more younger people on that council? I mean, a lot of them they're pretty up there in age.
Maybe from your view they're up there in age, but a lot of times the council members are even older, so it didn't strike me as being that as a whole that they're too senior. But it's always good when you have at least one younger person, say from their late 20s or 30s.
Is there a difference between, let's say all those council members were maybe in their 40s. Is the mindset different from maybe a 40-year-old to maybe like somebody in their 60s or 70s?
Sure.
Is it true that the council's really split? Do you guys really get along?
Well, there are two different faces to the council situation. How they interact privately is cordial and generally respectful. It does seem that in the public setting there's a little more drama. But I think when you see the plan that I'm putting together for the end of this month, where the council will consider what it's going to take to keep this city from basically collapsing financially, I think you'll see them come together.